first time I realized something was truly wrong, it was over a grocery receipt I found crumpled in the bottom of our minivan. I saw a charge for a stack of gift cards, an amount that made my stomach drop, and I stayed quiet while something in me cracked. My name is Waverly. I am 34 years old, and I work as an office manager at a small dental practice. It started the way a lot of things start now. Not with a big dramatic moment, with a phone glow in the dark. My husband Grayson would lie next to me in bed with his screen turned slightly away, like he was protecting it from the air itself. He would scroll for hours, thumb moving in that hypnotized rhythm, and every now and then he would make a sharp little sound through his nose, like a laugh that had no joy in it. At first I told myself it was just stress. We had a daughter, Maeve, who was in kindergarten and still needed her hair brushed and her shoes tied and her feelings explained to her like the world was a giant puzzle. Grayson's job had been rocky. The news had been ugly. Everything felt louder and harsher than it used to. But then the language in our house changed. It became normal for him to say things like, "They do not want families like ours to survive," or "You have no idea what is really going on," or "Just wait, you will see." He said it with a calm certainty that was almost soothing until you realized it was the same certainty people have right before they make a mistake they cannot take back. The first time he brought it up at dinner, Maeve was poking at her mac and cheese, her little cheeks puffed out while she tried to blow on it. Grayson was staring at a video on his phone, the sound low but still sharp, enough that I caught the words, "Traitors, parasites, wake up." I reached across the table and touched his wrist. "Hey," I said softly. "We are eating." He didn't look at me. He just turned the phone face down like he was slamming a door. "You would not understand," he said. That sentence landed like a slap, even though he said it quietly. After that, he started disappearing into online spaces the way some people disappear into casinos. He was physically in the room, but his mind was somewhere else, somewhere full of strangers who fed him a steady diet of rage and certainty. He stopped coming to Maeve's school events. He stopped helping with bedtime. He started calling teachers groomers under his breath, like it was a normal word. He started side-eyeing our neighbors. He started making comments in the grocery store that made my skin crawl. Little muttered things about people speaking other languages, about who belonged and who did not. Every time he did it, I felt the heat of shame climb up my neck, but I swallowed it. I kept the peace. I told myself I could steer him back. I told myself this was a phase. I told myself love was patient. Love was steady. Love could outweigh a storm. Then I found the receipt. The gift cards were from a store we almost never used. The amount was several $100s, and the date was the same day he had told me he was working late. That night after he fell asleep, I picked up his phone. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. Not because I was afraid of what I would find, because some part of me already knew. I tried his passcode. Our anniversary. Wrong. Maeve's birthday. Wrong. His mother's birthday. Wrong. I stared at the locked screen, feeling like I was standing outside my own life. When I slid the phone back onto the nightstand, I caught my reflection in the dark glass of the window. I looked like someone who had been holding her breath for a long time. The next day at work, I checked our joint account the way you check a bruise you do not want to admit is there. I logged in during my lunch break, with my sandwich sitting untouched beside the keyboard, and I watched the numbers on the screen rearrange my entire understanding of the last year. Withdrawals, transfers, cash advances, a pattern that was careful enough to hide in the noise if you weren't looking, but clear once you were. It was not just the gift cards. It was thousands. My mouth went dry. My fingers went numb. I could hear the hum of the office printer and the distant sound of a drill from one of the treatment rooms, and it all felt unreal, like I was watching my life from behind glass. I did not confront him right away. Not because I was weak, because I needed to be smart. That was the moment the quiet revenge started. I opened a note on my phone and started keeping a timeline, dates, times, the exact wording of the ugliest things he said. The nights Maeve cried at bedtime because Daddy did not come upstairs. The mornings he slept through her school routine because he had been up researching until dawn. I started taking screenshots of the bank activity. I emailed them to myself from an account he did not know existed. I printed copies and tucked them into a folder at work behind a stack of old employee manuals. Then came the first twist. Maeve's teacher called me after school one afternoon. Her voice was gentle in the way professionals get gentle when they have to tell you something hard. "She seems anxious," she said, "and she said something today that I wanted to flag for you." My grip tightened around the phone. The hallway outside the office was loud with end-of-day chaos. Phones ringing, doors shutting, the dentist laughing with a patient. "What did she say?" I asked. There was a pause. "She said her dad told her not to talk to certain kids because they are not safe," the teacher said. And she seemed very confused. She said, "He says some people are bad inside, even if they smile." I felt like I had been punched. After I hung up, I sat in my car for a long time with my hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead, tears blurring the windshield. Anger came first, then humiliation, then fear. The kind of fear that makes you look at your own house like it might not be your home anymore. That night, I cooked dinner like normal. I asked Maeve about her day like normal. I laughed at her story about a classmate who wore his shoes on the wrong feet like normal. Grayson barely touched his food. He was wired, eyes bright, jaw tense. He kept checking his phone, flipping it over when he noticed me watching. Finally, he leaned back and said, "Do you ever think about how lucky we are that we are not asleep like everyone else?" I stared at my plate. I forced my voice to stay even. "What do you mean?" I asked. He smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who feels superior. "I mean, I am protecting us," he said. "You should be grateful." I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded. "Okay," I said quietly. That okay made him relax. It made him careless. That was the second twist. A few days later, I found a second phone. It was hidden in a shoebox in the back of our closet, underneath a pair of boots he never wore. It was old, scratched, but charged. When I turned it on, there were dozens of messages from a group chat with a name that sounded harmless, like something about truth and freedom. The messages were not harmless. They were full of slurs, full of threats disguised as jokes, full of fantasies about hurting people who did not fit their version of the world. And then I saw something that made my blood turn cold. A message from Grayson sent late at night saying he had a plan and that he could move money quietly if he needed to. My heart pounded so loudly I thought Maeve might hear it through the hallway. I did not take the phone. I did not confront him. I took pictures of the screen with my own phone, hands trembling, then put everything back exactly the way it was. I even adjusted the shoebox so it sat at the same crooked angle, like it had not been disturbed. I slept that night like a person sleeping in a house, with a loose floorboard over a dark hole. Every little sound felt like a warning. The third twist came from a woman I had never met. I was folding laundry when a notification popped up on the tablet. Grayson, sometimes used in the living room. He had left it connected to his accounts, careless again, and a new message flashed across the top. It was from a name I did not recognize. The message preview said, "Payment received. I have more files. She is worse than you think." My hands went slick with sweat. I tapped the notification. The message thread opened into a world so ridiculous it would have been funny if it had not been destroying my life. Grayson was sending money to someone who claimed they had hired a private investigator. The investigator was supposedly digging up proof about a famous public figure Grayson was obsessed with hating. The stranger sent him links, screenshots, blurry documents, and voice notes that sounded like someone reading from a script. And Grayson paid for it like he was buying oxygen. There were receipts, digital wallets, gift card codes, a steady stream of desperation. I stared at it until my vision swam. My stomach twisted with disgust and grief. This was not just political obsession. It was addiction. It was paranoia dressed up as righteousness. It was a scam that fed his hate and drained our future. That night, while Grayson was outside taking a call, I opened a fresh document on my laptop and started organizing everything. Bank records, screenshots, messages, dates. I named files carefully, like I was building a case brick by brick. Then I made 2 phone calls. The first was to a family law attorney recommended by a coworker. I told her I needed a consultation. I kept my voice steady, but my throat burned the whole time. The second was to my sister, because I needed someone to know what was happening in case I got swallowed by it. When Grayson came back inside, he was in a strange mood. Too cheerful, too focused. Maeve was coloring at the coffee table. She looked up and smiled at him, holding up her drawing. He barely glanced at it. "We need to talk," he said to me, eyes locked on mine. My skin prickled. "About what?" I asked. He stepped closer, lowering his voice like we were conspiring. "About the future," he said. "About how we are going to get out before things get worse." I kept my face blank. Inside, my thoughts were racing. "Out where? Worse how?" He continued. "I have been thinking. I might need to move some assets. We cannot keep everything in one place. They track people." I nodded slow. "Okay," I said. His eyes brightened like I had handed him permission. And that was when I decided the confrontation could not wait any longer. Not because I wanted to fight, because I needed to stop the bleeding. After Maeve went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with the printed bank statements in front of me. I did not raise my voice. I did not accuse. I just placed the papers down like they were facts, not feelings. Grayson walked in, saw them, and froze. "What is this?" he asked. "It is our account," I said. "I need you to explain the withdrawals." He laughed once, sharp and fake. "You have been snooping." "I have been trying to understand why our savings is disappearing," I said. His jaw tightened. He glanced toward the hallway, toward Maeve's room, and then back at me. "You would not get it," he said. "This is bigger than you." I took a breath. I kept my voice quiet. "Where did the money go?" I asked. He leaned forward, eyes flashing. "To people who are actually doing something," he said. "To protect kids, to fix the schools, to stop the rot." "And the designer purchases?" I asked, flipping to another page. He blinked. "What purchases?" I turned the laptop screen toward him and showed the list. Shoes, bags, expensive clothing. For a second, something like panic flickered in his expression. Then his face twisted into anger. "You are trying to control me," he said. "You are exactly like them." I felt something snap inside me, but I did not let it show. I kept my hands folded on the table. "I spoke to a lawyer today," I said. "I am filing for divorce, Grayson." The room went so quiet I could hear the refrigerator cycling. He stared at me like he didn't understand the words, like I had spoken another language. Then he smiled. "You are bluffing," he said. "I am not," I said. The smile vanished. His face went pale, then flushed like a storm rolling in. "You cannot do that," he said, voice rising. "You cannot break up this family. You cannot take my daughter." "I am not taking her," I said. "I am protecting her." That was when he exploded. Not with words at first, with movement. He grabbed a glass from the drying rack and hurled it toward the sink, shattering it. Then he swept his arm across the counter, knocking over a bowl, a plate, a mug. It felt like watching someone set fire to a room just to prove they could. Maeve cried out from her bedroom. My blood turned to ice. I stood up slowly, not to fight, but to move. I stepped toward the hallway. Grayson blocked me. His eyes were wild. "She is fine," he snapped. "Do not make this dramatic. I need to check on her," I said. He shoved the chair aside and reached for another object, a heavy cup this time. For a split second, I thought he would throw it at the wall again. Instead, he threw it at me. It hit the side of my head. White pain flashed through my vision. I tasted blood. The world tilted. I did not scream. I did not yell. I put my hand to my head and felt warmth spreading through my hair. Grayson stared at me, breathing hard, like he couldn't believe what he had done. I looked at him, then looked past him, toward my daughter's door. I stayed quiet because I knew if I said one wrong thing, he would turn into someone I did not recognize at all. I turned and walked out the front door with my keys shaking in my hand, blood slipping down my temple, and I ran to my neighbor's porch like it was the only solid ground left. Behind me, inside the house, I heard Maeve crying louder. And then I heard Grayson's voice, not calling after me, but shouting into the air like the whole world was his enemy. Quick real-life pause. This part is for me. Some nights I am editing and I want to quit, but then I see your comments and I keep going. Like, subscribe, and tell me where you are listening from. Okay, continuing. My neighbor opened the door and her face changed the second she saw me. She didn't ask questions. She pulled me inside and grabbed a towel and pressed it to my head with hands that were steadier than mine. "What happened?" she asked. I swallowed hard. My throat felt raw. "He threw something," I said. "My daughter is inside." Her eyes sharpened. She reached for her phone. "I am calling the police," she said. I did not argue. I did not beg. I just nodded because the silence was over now, and I needed professionals. Paper, records, a line drawn that could not be erased. Through her front window, I could see my house. The porch light was on. The curtains were half open. Shadows moved inside like a storm trapped behind glass. The distant sound of sirens started low, then grew louder, and I realized my hands were trembling so hard I could barely keep the towel against my head. I sat perfectly still anyway, because this was the moment everything was about to change, and Grayson still thought he was the one in control. The sirens washed the street in blue and red, and my neighbor kept pressure on the towel against my head like she was trying to hold my whole life together with her palm. I heard a door slam inside my house, then another, cabinets, glass, the sound of a man pacing in a cage he built for himself. When the first officer stepped onto my neighbor's porch, I stood up too fast and nearly swayed. My neighbor steadied my elbow. The officer's eyes went straight to the blood. His voice softened, but his posture sharpened. "Ma'am, are you injured?" "Yes," I said. My voice came out thin. "My husband threw a cup at my head. My daughter is still inside." The second officer was already speaking into a radio. The first one asked me to stay where I was. I watched them cross the lawn toward my front door. I watched like my eyes were the only thing I could still control. The porch light made the mess inside easier to see through the window. The kitchen looked like a hurricane had chosen it personally. Shards glittered on the floor. A chair was tipped on its side. The sink was overflowing with something I couldn't identify, like he had turned the faucet on just to watch it spill. One officer knocked. Loud, firm, the kind of knock that does not ask. I heard Grayson's voice from inside. Too loud, too excited, like he was already performing. "I know my rights," he shouted. "This is a setup." The officers exchanged a look and knocked again. I could not hear every word, but I caught pieces. "Sir, open the door. We need to check on the child." The door opened with a violent jerk. Grayson appeared in the doorway, hair messy, face flushed, eyes wide and shining. He wore the same shirt he had eaten dinner in, now splattered with something from the kitchen. He looked at the officers like they were the enemy he had been promised. He also looked past them, right at me. In that second, his expression shifted. Not fear, not regret, something colder. A calculation. Then he smiled, soft, charming, the smile I used to fall for. "She is fine," he said, voice suddenly calm. "She is emotional. She had a little accident, and now she is trying to ruin my life." My stomach churned, but I stayed quiet. The officer didn't react to the charm. He kept his gaze steady. "We need to see your daughter," he said. Grayson's smile tightened. "You cannot just come in," he said. The officer didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He just took a step forward, the kind of step that says you can either cooperate or make this worse for yourself. Grayson hesitated. Then, with an exaggerated sigh, he stepped aside. One officer went in. The other stayed at the door with Grayson. I watched the whole thing through my neighbor's window, holding my breath until my chest ached. A few moments later, the officer reappeared carrying Maeve. She was wrapped in her blanket, her hair sticking up in soft chaos, her face blotchy from crying. When she saw me, she reached toward me so fast it looked like her whole body was desperate to escape. "Mama," she sobbed. I ran down the porch steps and took her from the officer with my good arm, pressing her against my chest. Her little hands clutched my shirt like fabric could keep her safe. "You are okay," I whispered into her hair. "You are okay. I have you. I have you." Behind me, Grayson's voice rose again. "See? She is fine. She is overreacting. She is poisoning her against me." My neighbor stood behind me like a wall. The officer asked Maeve gently if she felt safe. Maeve buried her face in my shoulder and shook her head. That tiny shake was louder than any scream. Grayson took a step forward. "Maeve," he said, trying to soften his tone. "Come on, tell them Daddy didn't do anything." Maeve flinched. Something in me turned to steel. I didn't scream at him. I didn't argue. I just met the officer's eyes and said very clearly, "He hit me in the head. There is blood." My daughter heard him breaking things and screaming, "I want him away from us." The officer nodded once like he had already decided. Then Grayson did the thing I still think about when I can't sleep. He laughed. A short, sharp laugh, like this was all a joke that would end with him winning. "You are going to regret this," he said to me. "When it all comes out, you are going to regret it." The officer turned toward him. "Sir, put your hands behind your back." Grayson blinked, like the world had broken a rule. "You cannot arrest me," he snapped. "She is lying." The officer didn't flinch. "Hands behind your back now." Grayson's shoulders tensed. For a second, I thought he would fight. I thought he would do something stupid right there on the porch. Instead, he threw his head back and shouted toward the street like he was calling to an invisible audience. "This is what happens when you tell the truth," he yelled. "They silence you." The officer cuffed him anyway. Maeve lifted her head just enough to see the flashing lights. Her eyes went huge. "Is Daddy going to jail?" she whispered. I swallowed hard, tasting copper and grief. "Daddy is going to calm down," I said softly, "and you are staying with me." Grayson looked back at us as they led him to the car. His expression was not remorseful. It was furious, betrayed, as if I had violated him by refusing to be hurt quietly. That was the moment I knew the man I married was gone. Not lost, not confused, gone. The next hours blurred into paperwork, statements, and a trip to urgent care where a nurse cleaned the cut on my head and asked me questions in a voice that was too practiced. She offered resources. She offered a quiet room. She offered a kind of compassion that made me want to collapse. When we finally got home, it was not to my house. It was to my sister's. She lived across town, and when she opened the door and saw Maeve asleep in my arms, her face crumpled. "Oh, Waverly," she whispered, and pulled us inside like she could shut the whole world out with a lock. Maeve slept in my sister's guest bed, still wearing her little socks. I sat on the edge of the mattress and watched her breathe, and I realized I had been holding back tears for so long they didn't come easily anymore. What came instead was exhaustion so deep it felt like I was sinking. In the early morning, when the house was quiet and my sister was asleep on the couch nearby, I opened my laptop and did the hardest thing I have ever done. I started building a case. Not a dramatic case, not a revenge fantasy. A real one. I copied files into folders. I labeled screenshots by date. I wrote down the officers' names. I wrote down exactly what Grayson said on the porch, word for word, because the way he spoke mattered. The smug certainty. The threat hidden inside a warning. Then I did something I never expected to do in my own marriage. I filed for a protective order. The courthouse smelled like old carpet and stale air. The waiting area was full of people staring at walls, holding paperwork like it was life support. When my name was called, my legs felt heavy, but my voice stayed steady. I told the judge what happened. I showed the injury. I explained the money, the neglect, the extremist group chats, the way Maeve was being taught fear and hatred like it was a bedtime story. I did not embellish. I did not cry on purpose. I just told the truth, clean and straight, like a line drawn across a page. The judge granted a temporary restraining order. Temporary custody was awarded to me. Grayson was allowed supervised visits only, and even hearing those words made my knees almost buckle with relief. Outside the courtroom, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Grayson's mother. I stared at it for a long moment before I opened it, because I expected blame. I expected denial. I expected her to tell me I was destroying her son. Instead, it said, "I am so sorry. I believe you. Tell me what you need." I pressed my lips together so hard they hurt. I did not let myself cry until I was sitting in my car, alone, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. That afternoon, my attorney called. Her voice was calm, professional, and oddly comforting. She explained the next steps. She explained how the criminal case and family case could run alongside each other. She explained that the paper trail mattered. She explained that the best thing I could do was stay steady. "Do not engage him directly," she said. "Let the system do its job." I almost laughed at how perfectly that matched what I had already started doing. Speak less, hit harder with action. That night, after Maeve went to sleep at my sister's, I logged into our joint accounts again and followed the trail deeper. My hands did not shake this time. They were steady, almost cold. I found a new account I had never seen before. A credit line in his name with my address attached. Charges that made my stomach knot. More designer purchases. More transfers. More of our family's future siphoned off into his private world. And then I found something else. An email confirmation in his inbox that he had set up a new mailing address, not a post office box, a real address, an apartment complex on the other side of town. My pulse jumped. He had been planning to leave, or planning to hide, or planning something worse. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. In that moment, I understood something that made my skin go cold. The glass cup wasn't the first crack. It was the first time he couldn't hide the crack anymore. I forwarded the email to my attorney. I sent the screenshots. I added it to my timeline. I wrote down the address. Then I turned off the laptop and sat in the dark kitchen of my sister's house, listening to the quiet hum of her refrigerator. And I felt a kind of calm I hadn't felt in months. Not peace. Clarity. The next supervised visit was scheduled through a third party at a family center. My attorney told me to bring Maeve, hand her off to the supervisor, and leave. No conversations, no contact, no chance for him to twist words. But the morning of that visit, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I let it ring, then it buzzed again. A text message appeared. It was a photo, a picture of Maeve's drawing from our kitchen table, the one she had tried to show him, the one he barely looked at. Under the photo, the message read, "You really want to do this? You really want to make me the villain?" My fingers went cold around the phone. He had access to my house. Or someone did. I stared at the screen, and the question I had been avoiding finally rose up, sharp and unavoidable. If he could get that photo, what else could he reach? I did not reply to that text. I did not call the number back. I stared at the photo until my eyes burned. Then I forwarded it to my attorney and saved it to a folder labeled with the date and time. My sister found me sitting at the kitchen table with my phone in my hand like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "What is it?" she asked. I showed her the screen. Her face hardened in a way I had never seen before. "He is trying to scare you," she said. "I know," I whispered. "But how did he get this picture?" We both looked toward the hallway, toward the closed door where Maeve slept. In that moment, I realized something terrible about my old life. I had been living inside a house where I was the only one following the rules. I thought normal behavior could protect me. I thought love and patience and reason could protect me. They could not. My sister picked up her keys. "We are going to your house," she said. "Right now. We are not guessing. We are checking." I felt my stomach drop, but I nodded. The drive felt endless, even though it was only a few miles. I kept imagining Grayson inside our home, touching Maeve's drawings, opening drawers, deciding which parts of our life were his to take. My thoughts were sharp and ugly. Anger, humiliation, fear, and under all of it, grief so deep it felt like a second heartbeat. When we pulled into the driveway, nothing looked wrong from the outside. The porch light was off. The windows were dark. The quiet was too normal. My sister told me to stay behind her. She walked up first and tried the knob. It turned. My skin went cold. The door opened a few inches, and my throat tightened so hard I could barely breathe. I did not step inside. I did not shout his name. I stood there and listened because the silence mattered. Silence tells you what is real. We heard nothing. My sister pushed the door open wider. The air inside smelled like old food and stale water, like the mess he made had settled into the walls. The kitchen was still damaged. Broken glass had been swept into piles and left behind, like someone wanted it to look cleaned, but did not want to do the work. Then I noticed something that made my hands start to shake. The shoebox in the closet. It was gone. I felt my stomach lurch. He had taken the second phone. He had taken the proof. But the proof was already saved, already emailed, already printed. He just didn't know it yet. My sister walked through the house with her own phone out, recording everything. The open door, the missing items, the kitchen damage, the closet. The drawer in the living room where I kept Maeve's school papers was slightly open, like someone had been digging through it. I didn't touch anything. I remembered what the officer told me at the hospital. Do not clean. Do not rearrange documents. So I documented. Then I stepped back outside and called the police again. When the officers arrived, I showed them the text message with Maeve's drawing. I showed them the open door. I told them the restraining order was already in place. They went inside and did their own sweep. One officer returned and asked me if I had changed the locks after Grayson was arrested. I swallowed. "No," I said. I thought the order would stop him. The officer's expression didn't judge me. It just carried the tired knowledge of someone who has seen fear up close. "A piece of paper does not lock a door," he said gently. That sentence hit me in a way I can still feel. A piece of paper does not lock a door. After they filed a report, my sister drove me straight to a hardware store. We bought new locks, new deadbolts, a camera for the front porch, window sensors, a bright motion light that would turn on the second anyone stepped onto our lawn. While the cashier scanned everything, I kept thinking of Maeve's small voice, of the way she flinched when Grayson tried to coax her into saying the right thing. I was done letting him get close enough to twist anything else. That evening, I met my attorney in her office. She was calm, organized, and blunt in a way that steadied me. "This text is intimidation," she said, tapping the screen. "And if he entered the home, that is a serious violation." "What about the supervised visit?" I asked. "You will still follow the court order," she said, "but we are going to request changes, additional restrictions, and I want you to keep doing exactly what you are doing. Stay quiet, stay factual, let him make mistakes." I nodded, feeling my jaw tighten. For the supervised visit, I dressed Maeve in her favorite sweater and brushed her hair into a neat ponytail. I kept my face calm in front of her. I told her she was going to play in a room with toys while a grown-up watched. I told her she could tell me anything she felt. At the family center, I handed her to the supervisor, then walked out without looking back. In my car, I sat with my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I felt sick. I felt furious. I felt like I was doing something impossible while pretending it was normal. The supervisor called me when the visit ended. Her voice was careful. "Maeve did fine," she said, "but I do need to tell you something." My heart lurched. "What?" I asked. "He kept trying to talk about you," she said. "He kept telling her you were confused, that you were being manipulated. He asked her to say things about your home, who comes over, what you do at night." My blood turned to ice. "Did she answer?" I asked. "She looked at me first," the supervisor said. "She asked if she had to. I told her she didn't." I closed my eyes, swallowing back the sting behind them. "She also said something else," the supervisor continued. "She said, 'Daddy told me not to tell you about the secret phone.' She said she saw it once in his bag." My chest tightened so painfully I had to lean forward in my seat. The secret phone. The one he had removed from the closet. Maeve had seen it. He had involved her. That night, when Maeve was asleep, I sat with my attorney's email open and typed out everything the supervisor said. I added it to the timeline. I saved it. I sent it. I kept my message clean and short. Facts only. No emotion. No pleading. The next morning, my attorney filed an emergency request to modify visitation and to add more protective conditions. She also filed evidence of the intimidation text and the suspected home entry. Grayson responded the way he always responded now, with noise. He posted online. He sent messages to mutual friends. He tried to paint me as unstable. He tried to make his story louder than mine. But loud is not proof. 2 weeks later, we were back in court. Grayson showed up looking polished. New haircut, new clothes, a face carefully arranged into innocence. He sat beside his criminal attorney and glanced at me like he wanted to remind me he still existed. I didn't look back. My attorney spoke for me. She presented the restraining order, the injury report, the police report, the account withdrawals, the intimidation text, the supervisor's account of his behavior. Then she did something that made my stomach flip. She introduced evidence about the financial scam, the messages, the payments, the absurd private investigator fantasy. Grayson's face twitched just once, a crack in the mask. His attorney tried to object, tried to frame it as irrelevant. The judge asked a simple question. Was marital money used? The judge said. My attorney answered calmly. Yes, she said. Significant sums? Grayson's jaw tightened. His eyes flashed. And for a second, he looked exactly like the man on my porch screaming at invisible enemies. The judge issued a stricter visitation order, continued the restraining order, and set a date for a full custody hearing. When we left the courtroom, Grayson's mother was waiting in the hallway. She looked older than I remembered. Her eyes were swollen like she had been crying for days. She walked toward me slowly. I am sorry, she said, voice shaking. I didn't know. I didn't want to know. But I know now. I didn't speak. I just watched her. She swallowed hard. He asked me for money, she confessed. He said it was for legal fees. He said you were draining him. But when I asked for invoices, he got angry. He told me I was brainwashed. My stomach turned, but I kept my face still. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. I brought you something, she said. I thought you should have it. I took it without speaking. Inside were printed emails and bank screenshots she had pulled from her own account. Transfers to the same scammer name. Gift card receipts. A message where Grayson told her he was gathering funds to relocate quickly. If things turned. My throat tightened. My attorney had said to let him make mistakes. He was making them everywhere. That was the final twist. The truth was not just that Grayson had changed. The truth was that he had been pulling other people into his collapse, draining them too and calling it purpose. I handed the envelope to my attorney the same day. At the full custody hearing, that envelope became a hammer. The judge did not care about internet theories. The judge cared about behavior, about violence, about intimidation, about neglect, about finances, about a child's safety. Maeve's teacher submitted a statement. The supervisor submitted a statement. My medical records spoke. The police report spoke. The bank records spoke. And Grayson, in his effort to prove he was the victim, spoke too much. He tried to argue that Maeve was being trained against him. He tried to claim the court was part of a corrupt system. He tried to insist he had inside knowledge and that I was too asleep to understand. He said it with the same smug certainty he once used at my dinner table. But in court, certainty without evidence is just noise. The judge granted me sole legal and physical custody. Grayson was allowed supervised visits under strict conditions, with the option for further restriction if he violated anything again. When the judge spoke the final ruling, I felt my whole body go light, like my bones had been carrying a weight that finally slid off. Outside the courthouse, I stood in the sun and realized something strange. I was not free because I won. I was free because I stopped begging someone to come back from a place they did not want to leave. Months passed. Maeve started sleeping through the night again. Her teacher told me she laughed more in class. She drew pictures of our new apartment with bright windows and a big couch and a dog we did not have yet, because hope is a thing children build out of crayons. I kept my routines simple. Work, school drop-off, dinner, bath time, books, bed. I made our life predictable again, because predictability is how a nervous system learns to trust. Grayson had his supervised visits. Sometimes he showed up, sometimes he didn't. When he did, Maeve came home quiet and tired, like she had been walking around a storm trying not to get wet. I never asked her to hate him. I never spoke his name with venom. I just told her the truth in a way a child could hold. Daddy is sick in his thoughts, I said, and grown-ups are making sure you are safe. Then one afternoon, I got an email from my attorney. The subject line made my blood run cold. Fraud investigation update. I opened it with shaking fingers. The scammer Grayson had been paying had been identified. The payments were traced. There was an investigation. There were other victims. People who had been fed outrage like candy and then drained of money. And tucked into the details was one line that made my breath stop. A credit application had been attempted using Maeve's information. Not approved, not completed, but attempted. I sat down hard at my kitchen table, my throat tightening, my hands going numb. It wasn't enough that he broke me. He tried to reach into my daughter's future too. I forwarded the email to the judge's clerk through my attorney. A motion was filed. The court tightened restrictions again. When I tucked Maeve into bed that night, she wrapped her arms around my neck and whispered, "We are safe now, right?" I kissed her forehead. "Yes," I whispered. "We are safe." After she fell asleep, I stood in the doorway and watched her breathe. And I realized the quiet revenge was never about hurting Grayson. It was about choosing my daughter over my denial. Discussion section. All right, I am stepping out of the story for a minute. When someone falls into a world like that, it is not just beliefs, it is identity. It becomes who they are. And that is why arguing almost never works. You think you are debating facts, but they are defending their whole sense of self. The hardest part for me was admitting I could not love someone back into reality. I kept thinking if I stayed calm enough, patient enough, gentle enough, he would finally hear me. But the truth is, calm only works when the other person is still capable of shame. And I want to say something else. If you are dealing with someone like this, please hear me. Safety is not a feeling. Safety is a plan. It is locks. It is paperwork. It is proof. It is asking for help before you think you are allowed to. I didn't win because I was smarter or stronger. I won because I stopped talking and started documenting. I stopped hoping and started acting. I let the truth speak to the right people. And the quietest part of all is this. I didn't destroy my family. I saved what was left of it.